1, 2, 3, testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, testing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So we're 1, 2, 3, testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And the audio interface is turned on. Oh, Alana said yay. Okay, but I don't.
Okay, so now I'm going to try. All right, but that's not working off of this. All right, so now we're going to try plugging this in and see if we can get this to work. So hang on a second.
Got it.
Right, but you got from the computer. Now we're going to try this. So now we plugged in the Focusrite. Okay, we had audio and now we don't have audio. Let's double check. We may just have to go with the audio from the computer. All right, can you hear now? Can you hear me okay now? Testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, now that I'm right in front of the mic, can you hear me now? Testing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I think we'll go with this, even though Bonnie's earphones aren't working, but it's coming out of here.
It's low.
It's low. All right, so let's see if we can adjust something here. One, 2, 3, testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Checking 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, sounds louder now. Okay, well, we're going to start services in 2 minutes. Thank you for hanging in there, and we shall start. Thank you for hanging in there, and we shall start. Okay, I checked that. Okay, so. Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to begin our service. If you have not yet put on your talit, please rise and we'll put on the talit together. Let's say the bracha together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehit atef bat tzitzit. And you may be seated, and we begin our service as always with some prayers to help to set the mood. Page 14.
Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. Yeram hayam, Yeram hayam, Yeram hayam, umelo, Yeram hayam, Yeram hayam, Yeram hayam, umelo, Hoshea et amecha, Varech et nachlatecha, Ureim, 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 Benasem, Ureim, Benasem, Ad Ha'olam, Hoshea et Amecha, Uvarech et Nachlatecha, Ureim, 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 Benasem, Ureim, Benasem, Ad Ha'olam. Mizmor, Mizmor, Shir, Shir Liyom HaShabbat. 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 Mizmor, Shir, Shir Liyom HaShabbat. Mizmor, Shir, Shir Liyom HaShabbat. Tzadik katamar yifrach yifrach. Tzadik katamar yifrach. Tzadik katamar yifrach yifrach. Tzadik katamar yifrach. Ki erez balvanon yiske. Ki erez balvanon yiske. Ki erez balvanon yiske yiske. Yeres balvanon yiske, Yeres balvanon yiske, Yeres balvanon yiske, yiske. Mikolot mayim, mayim rabim adirim. Mishpareyam Adir Bamarom Adonai La 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 Malchutecha Malchut kol olamim Umemshaltecha B'chol edor vador Malchutecha Malchut kol olamim Umemshaltecha B'chol dor vador Malchutcha Malchut kol olamim Umemshaltecha B'chol edor vador Malchutcha Malchut kol olamim Umemshaltecha B'chol dor vador. Va'anachnu nevarech ya me'ata v'yad olam me'ata v'yad olam Hallelujah 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 Hallelujah, hallelujah, B'tzil tzalei shama. Hallelujah, hallelujah, B'tzil tzalei trua. Kol hanshama te'aleluya. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Kol hanshama Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Please rise. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Ya la 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai, Amevorach. Adonai, Mevorach, Mevorach, Leolam Va'ed. Mevorach, Mevorach, Leolam Va'ed. Please be seated. We are on page 16. El Adon al kol hamaasim baruch umevorach befiko nishama gadlo v'tuvo malei olam da'at udvuna sovevi moto Hamid ga'achayot hakodesh B'nedar b'chavod al merkava Zechut u'mishor lifnei chiso Hesed v'rachamim lifnei chevoto Tovim mi'orot shebara Eloheinu Yitzaram B'da'at b'vina u'b'haskel koach u'mura Natan bahem liot moshlim b'kerev teva Maleim ziv u'mekim noga Na'ezivam b'chol ha'olam Smechim nitzeitam nizasim levoam Osim b'hem haritzon konam Be'er b'chavod notnim lishmo Zahala verina lezecher malchuto Kara l'shemesh vayizrach or ra'a ve'hitkim Surat halvana Shevach notnim lo Kol tziva marom Tiferet ugedula Srafim ve'ofanim ve'chayot hakodesh Lai la lai lai la lai lai ya lai la la lai ya la 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 lai la lai lai la lai lai ya lai la la lai ya la 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 lai 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 la lai 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 la lai ya lai ya lai ya la 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 lai Lai, 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 lai. Or chadash Zion ta'ir v'nizkeh ulanu meira leorot. Or chadash Zion ta'ir v'nizkeh ulanu meira leorot. Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer HaMeorot Ava Rabba Ahavtanu Adonai Eloheinu Chem L'Gdola V'Teira Amalta Aleinu Ba'avur Avoteinu Avur Avoteinu Shabbatchu v'cha Shabbatchu v'cha Avinu Malkeinu V'tilamdem chukei chayim Kein tichaneinu v'lamdeinu Avinu ha'av ha'rachaman Amrachem rachem aleinu. B'tein b'libeinu lehavin ulaskil lishmo alil modu lelamnei lishmor velasod ulkayem et kol divrei Talmud Torah kecha b'ahavat Ve'ha'erinenu v'toratecha v'dahabek libeinu v'mitzvotecha ve'yached levaveinu le'ava u'le'ira et shemecha ve'lo nevos lo ve'lo nevos le'olam va'ed ki v'shem kodshecha agadol v'hanora batachnu nagila v'nismecha b'shuatecha V'havienu l'shalom yabakin for ta'aras v'tolichenu komem v'liarsenu ki el po'el yeshuot ata uvana v'charta mikalam v'lashon v'kerev tanu l'shimcha gadol sela be'emet lahodot lecha u'liachadcha b'yahava baruch ata Adonai abocher b'yamo Yisrael b'ahava Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad V'yahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha Hayom levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha u'v'lechtecha v'derech u'v'shachbecha u'v'kumecha u'kshartam liot al yadecha V'hayu letotafot beinecha uchetavetam amizuzo beitecha uvisharecha. Page 18. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the children of Israel and bid them to make tzitzit in the corners of their garments throughout their generations, putting upon the tzitzit of each corner a thread of blue. When you look upon the tzitzit, you will be reminded of all the commandments of the Lord and obey them. You will not be led astray by the inclination of your heart or by the of your eyes. Thus will you be reminded to fulfill all my commandments and be consecrated to your God. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I, the Lord, am your God." Alzot, shibechu ahuvim, shibechu ahuvim, v'romemu, 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 v'romemu el Venatanu, venatanu yedidim, venatanu, venatanu yedidim. Zmi wrote, she wrote, tishbachot, berachot, vehodaot, lemelech el chai v'kayam, ram v'nisa, gadol v'nara, mashpil geim, umagbi ashefa, alim. Motzi asi rimufode anavim vio zerdalim vion eliam oviet shavam elav Tehilo le'el elyon baruch mevorach Moshe u'bnei Yisrael echanu shira v'simcha rabba v'yamru chulam mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh nora tehilot osef ele shira chadasha shibuchu geulim l'shimcha sfat hayam Yachad kulam haduvim lichu v'yamaru Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. So before we do the Amidah, we're going to share what we are thankful for. And let me ask if you would like to share as I bring you the microphone, and let me just hold it in front of you. So please share. What are you thankful for? Let the viewing audience also have a chance to hear.
Well, I'm reading from Janet Kirschbaum, who said that they're most thankful that their son Mark survived a horrendous accident that totaled his Tesla with a concussion and minor injuries so far. He felt God was truly with him. We are so thankful. So that's from Janet and Richard Kirschbaum.
Wow, good news. Thank you for sharing that. Paula.
Can't beat that. Yeah, I'm very thankful. We had a lovely 5 days in San Diego with our San Diego family. We celebrated Thanksgiving, Stacy's birthday, Lou's birthday, and the first night of Hanukkah. It was very hectic, but it was wonderful. And now we're waiting for everybody to come here in a couple of weeks so we can have a further celebration of Lou's birthday.
Very nice. Who else would like to share what you are thankful for?
I'm thankful that it is David's birthday next Thursday. And can I say how old you are?
Sure.
Okay, David's going to be 75. And we woo! And we have some cupcake package treats at the Kiddush in honor of his birthday. So
Thank you. And that makes me one of the youngest people in the room. So so that's nice. Who else would like to share what you are thankful for?
Thank you. First of all, Rabbi, you are one day separate from me. I'm 3 years older than you. You're catching up. But I'm also thankful our granddaughter, Emma, her birthday's the same day as yours. And she's turning 20, no more a teenager. Also, we're thankful that Renee got home safely early this morning from Charleston, South Carolina. So I'm always thankful when we hear from her. No, she's back on land.
Very nice, and happy birthday, Ray. Who else would like to share what you are thankful for? So some of you may have to make your way up here because the mic, you think you do, but I will repeat what we have people at home who need to hear you. That's who this is going to, not to you. This is going to them. But I will repeat what you say. We're very grateful. They just came back from visiting children and grandchildren from Santa Cruz. And while it was so wonderful, they're so happy to be home. Back in their own bed. And they waive consecutive interpretation. You all remember that from the hearings, right? Okay. Who else would like to share? While I'm in this area, any of you would like to share what you are thankful for?
As usual, you have to be thankful for the small things. Even though I have 6 Hanukkahot, this year I was able to find one of them in time for Hanukkah.
A miracle. Who else would like to share what you are thankful for? Anybody down here in this area? Okay. Stan, we'll have you come up here, please.
Before I do, birthday Shabbat, than anyone else who may have had a birthday besides yours.
You're right. I thought we did that later, but yeah, you're right. We do it at this point. So let us wish happy birthday. So Becky is celebrating a birthday this month. I am. Ray is, and Lou is celebrating a birthday this month. Right? Who else was celebrating a birthday in December? Anybody else? Let's wish them all a happy birthday. Yom Huledet Sameach. Yom Huledet Sameach. Yom Huledet Sameach. Yom Huledet Sameach. Okay, right in there.
Right up here. Thank you. And so wonderful to be here. Hanukkah, Shabbat, Rabbi's birthday, what more can we ask? And I want to know, as I have been sharing how thankful I am to the number of people who have made my life what it is today. And at the top or near the top of the list is Rabbi Vorspan himself on his birthday. So more power to him, many, many years. And I want to mention 2 other people. One is David Suissa, another David, who's, of course, the publisher of the Jewish Journal, which is now back in paper publication. Have they started delivering here now? Or is there some place where the people are going to be able to pick them up? Okay, well, I wanted to mention, here it is, but I want to just say something towards the end of David Suissa's column. And he ends his column is entitled, "Are We Losing Our Imaginations?" in which he's talking about how the cyber world and everything that we do has changed our world to the point where we don't do the things in nature and whatever that enhance our imagination. So he ends with this quote, "With Hanukkah being so close to Thanksgiving this year, it's a good time to marry the gratitude of being alive with the power of our imaginations and to bring light to the world." So may that be our goal. And certainly I count David Suissa as one of the people who bring light to my world. And the third person I want to mention is Rabbi Ed Feinstein. And in connection with Hanukkah, I've talked about him and we've heard him speak many times. He wrote back in 2003, "The Grinch Who Stole the Latkes." So that's how I'm going to use some of my time. The Grinch Who Stole the Latkes. Or the Jews of old Jewsville just loved holidays and kept them religiously in all of their ways. On Rosh Hashanah, they ate apples and honey, then came to the temple all dressed in Armani. On Holy Yom Kippur, they prayed and they fasted. Through Rabbi's long sermons, they fetched, but they lasted. Till Neely was over and proclaimed Tanner Fox, "Go home and break fast on bagels and lox." They sat and they fasted in glorious sukkahs, and on Simchat Torah, they danced off their tuchas. Come Purim, they bought the shul their noisemakers while dressed up in costumes like Shaq and the Lakers back in then. On Pesach, they asked the Haggadah the 4 questions and ate so much matzah, which is bad for digestion. But of all the holidays that we Jews remember, the most special in Jewville was one in December. With tales of brave Judah, with latkes and dreidels, Hanukkah thrilled Jewsville's boychicks and maidels. Hanukkah made all their families together to sing, to celebrate, no matter how cold the weather. There was one among them who got no joy and no latkes from candles and latkes and dreidels and brachas. In fact, though his home was close to the sewer, it made him quite nauseous to hear Mott sewer. Hanukkah made him angry and so bluish, you'd hardly have guessed that he was born Jewish. Since his bar mitzvah, he grew not an inch. He was surly and hairy, and they called him the Grinch. He arrived on a mountaintop far above town. When Hanukkah came, he declared with a frown, I hate all the holidays. It's all hocus pocus. When I tell the story, and for Antiochus. Besides, because the miracles, they are all made up and fake. Anyone who believes them made a mistake. Maybe Maccabees found some of the oil in the temple, but soon it burned out. That's the truth. It's just that simple. And so, my dear children, here's the cold, hard, dark fact. If you're looking for oil, it's under a rack. They're polishing menorahs. He snarled with a sneer. Tomorrow's Hanukkah, it's practically here. And then he growled with his Grinch fingers, nervously drumming, I must find a way to stop Hanukkah from coming. So the night before Hanukkah, when the town smelled of latkes, the Grinch donned his hat and zipped up his gatkes. He snuck through the town, and while latkes were cooking, he sprinkled his poison when no one was looking. No one got sick and no one got fluish, but the Grinch bad latkes changed everyone to Jewish. The Grinch, he was clever with a great sense of humor because his evil poison turned kids into consumers. When families told tales of wise Mattathias, all kids could say was, what did you buy us? We want PlayStation, Xbox, and we'll make a big fuss. We want Barbies and Legos because toys are us. But there's a lot more to go, but I'm going to do towards the end of it. We got to get to okay. But there was still one in Jewville who was immune to his potion. For her, Hanukkah meant dedication, devotion. Susie LeJew was a Jew, oh so loyal, but no latkes for her. She's allergic to oil. So while all Jewville went crazy with materialism, Susie stayed rooted in true Judaism. She knew it was her task, like old Mattathias, to break down the idols and bind what it ties to gods that are false and ideals so untrue, and remind us the real meaning of being a Jew. But how I'm just one in all of this madness, how I'm a kid, she cried in her sadness. Anyway, it goes on to the end, and they're at the mall. They all went, okay. Everyone froze and looked on as distressed. They looked out from Nordstrom's and out from Express. At the little girl zealot with her great Jewish rap, they heard her at Nike's and even the Gap. A moment of silence and a sigh of emotion, and everyone woke up from Grinch's bad potion. What are we doing here with all this stuff? We don't need all this merchandise. We have enough. So they dropped other shopping bags they purchased with plastic. They all ran home. It was fantastic. For this was capitalist. It was disaster. The sales figures came in 10% below last year. But for those faithful to God, it was a moment to see, just like the first Hanukkah in 166 BCE. So the Grinch gets changed. The Grinch stood transfixed. He lost all his fight. The Grinch stood there mystified. He knew Susie was right. The Grinch was transformed that Hanukkah night, for in Susie's menorah, he saw God's true light. Since then, he's done a miraculous teshuvah. He's come to the minyan. He's a shaker and mover. He sings with the choir. He knows every song. And it's said he does Hanukkah all year long. That is our story, dear boychicks and maidels. So when you sit down to play with your dreidels, remember brave Susie, who made a friend of a foe. That's why it said, Negadal Hayapo. Thank you. We'll talk afterwards. No.
Thank you, Stan. Let us all rise as we continue with the Amidah, Tzur Yisrael, Akuma B'Yezrat Yisrael, Ufedei Chinumeha, Yehuda V'Yisrael, Go Aleinu, Adonai Tzvaot Shemo, Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch Atah Adonai, Kal Yisrael. And we continue quietly with our own private prayers of thankfulness. Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha Chen V'Chesed Chesed V'Rachamim Aleinu V'Al Kol Aleinu V'Al Kol Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael Amecha Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha Chen V'Chesed V'Rachamim Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha Chen V'Chesed V'Rachamim Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael Amecha Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael Amecha Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha Chen V'Chesed V'Rachamim Ose Shalom, 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 Bimromav Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu. Ose Shalom, 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 Bimromav Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Imaru. Amen. This is also Rosh Chodesh Tevet, which means that we do Hallel. So please turn to page 27. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav mitzivanu likro et hahalel. Tzeit Yisrael mi Mitzrayim Beit Yaakov me'am lo'ez. Tzeit Yisrael mi Mitzrayim Beit Yaakov me'am lo'ez. Aita Yehuda lekachomim shalom hayam Ra'av ayanos hayarden yisov le'achor eharim raketu chelim givaot kivnei tzon malecha hayam titanus hayarden tisov le'achor Harim Tirkedu Che'elim Yevaot Kibnei Tzon Milifnei Adon Chuli Aretz Milifnei Elohai Yaakov Ahofechi Hatzur Agamayim Halamish Lemaino Mahayim. Adonai Zecharanu Yevarech, Yevarech et Beit Yisrael, Yevarech et Beit Aharon, Yevarech Yirei Adonai, Akatani mi Magdolim, Yosef Adonai Aleichem, Aleichem v'al Beneichem, Beruchim atem l'Adonai, Ose Shamayim va'aretz, Hashamayim Shamayim l'Adonai, Ve'aretz natan l'bnei Adam, Lo hametim Hallelujah, Elo kol yardei Tuma, V'anachnu nevarech ya, Me'ata v'yad olam, Me'ata v'yad olam. Hallelujah. Page 28. Hallelujah et Adonai, kol goyim shabechu, shabechu, kol ha'umim, ki gavar aleinu chasto, ve'emet Adonai, hallelujah, hallelujah. Odu l'Adonai, ki tov, ki leolam chasto, yomarna, yomarna, yomarna Yisrael, ki leolam chasto, yomruna Beit Aharon, Yomruna Beit Aharon, ki leolam chasto, Yomruna Yirei Adonai, Yomruna Yirei Adonai, ki leolam, ki leolam. Odecha ki anitani vatehi lishua. Odecha ki anitani vatehi lishua. Even masu abonim aita lerosh pina. Even masu abonim aita lerosh pina. Me'et Adonai Aitazot hi nifliot b'einenu me'et Adonai Aitazot hi nifliot b'einenu ze hayom asa Adonai nagila v'nismecha bo ze hayom asa Adonai nagila v'nismecha bo Ana Adonai Hoshiana. Ana Adonai Hoshiana. Ana Adonai Hatzlichana. Ana Adonai Hatzlichana. You may be seated. We head back to page 19. Yitgadav Yitgadav Shemei Rabbah. B'yamad brachiru te v'yamlich machute b'chayechonu v'yamechonu v'chayerecho Beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman karivi emeru Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevorach leolam leol meomaya Yitbarach v'shtabach v'tpoar v'trumam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shemei dekudesha Brichu le'ilam mikol b'chata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechmata da'amiron b'yom aviyemeru Amen. Titkabel tzlot hon v'adhon d'cho Yisrael kadam v'hon v'shmaya v'yemeru Amen. Yehishlam rabba min shamayim v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yemeru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yemeru Amen. we continue with the Torah service. Who would like the honor of leading us in the Shema, the Echad, and the Gadlu? Michael, thank you. Who would like the honor of Hagba, picking up the Torah? Mo, you haven't done it in a while. Should we? Mo, good. Okay. And Lou, you'll have it next time. Just throw something at me. Who would like the honor of Galila to wrap the Torah? Ray, thank you. So we continue our service, page 19. Ein kamocha ba'Elohim Adonai, v'ein kemasecha, malchutecha malchut kol olamim, umemshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. Adonai oz li'amo yitain, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Av harachamim eitiv avirtzonecha et Zion. Tivneh chomot Yerushalayim, Tivneh chomot Yerushalayim. Kivecha levad batachnu, melech el ram v'nisa, Adon olamim. Please rise. Vayehi bin Aaron, Vayomer Moshe, Uma Adonai. Udevar Adonai Mirushalayim, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Li'amo Yisrael, B'kedushato, Be'be'an arachetz, Ve'lishmei kadisha, kadisha yakira, Anamar tush bechan, Be'an arachetz, Be'an arachetz, Ve'lishmei kadisha, kadisha yakira. Anamar tush bechan, Yehi ravakadamach, Detiftach libi bioraita, Vitashli mishalim delibi, Vadecholama Yisrael, Letabu lechayim,
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kavod Shema.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Gadol Shemo.
Gadlu Ladonai Iti, Unaroma Ma Shemo Yachdav.
Lecha Adonai Hagedul, Hagedul, Hatiferet, Ve'anet, Ve'aho, Kiko Bashamayim Luba, Kiko Bashamayim Luba.
Adonai Hamamlacha Amikna Selecha. We're going to have our communal aliyah, so everybody please point right here and kiss. Baruch hu et Adonai Hamavorach. Baruch Adonai Hamavorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch ata Adonai noten haTorah. Vayehi miketz shnatayim yamim ufaro cholem d'hinei omed al hayor v'hinei min hayor olot sheva parot yefot mar'eh uvriot basar batirena ba'achu v'hinei sheva parot acherot olot acherehen min hayor Ra'od mar'eh v'dakot basar v'ta'amodna eitel haparot al sfat hayor v'tuchalna haparot ra'od hamar'eh v'dakot habasar et sheva haparot yefot hamar'eh v'habriot v'yikas faro. Kiss again. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch ata Adonai noten haTorah.
Mazel tov, you're a bar mitzvah.
Please be seated. Please be seated. This does bring back memories. My bar mitzvah, some of you know, was the day after New Year's Day. And on New Year's Day, I spent the day with my father at the synagogue reviewing the Torah portion. It was January 1st, and we were the only ones at shul because everybody else was home watching the parades. My father wanted to make sure I had it all nailed, right, after having prepared for my bar mitzvah over the course of the previous 6 or so months. And when we got there on New Year's Day, a cold, blistery day that particular year, he got the keys from the rabbi. So we were able to get into Temple Beth Am, took the Torah out. I looked at the words and none of them looked familiar. So he had to reteach me my entire Torah portion, New Year's Day of that particular year. And the next day was my bar mitzvah. And I looked at all those words. Again, they looked very unfamiliar, but we plodded through it. So those are the same words that I was able to chant today. And it's the Torah portion, Miketz, and it's part of the Joseph narrative, the longest narrative in the Torah. And I want to just point out one thing that is particularly interesting and relevant. The story, as you remember, has Joseph, who has ended up on trumped up charges in jail. And while he's in jail, there are two people who had worked for the Pharaoh who were thrown in jail with him. There was the guy who was in charge of pouring the wine for the king, and there was the king's baker. So his chief cup holder and his chief baker, and they were both in jail with him. And they both have dreams. And Joseph is able to hear the dreams and interpret them. He has very bad news for one of them. He says to the chief baker, I'm afraid that you're going to die. But he says to the chief cupbearer, you're going to live and you're going to be restored again to your place. And that very same person, the chief cup holder, we now read about in our Torah portion this Shabbat in Miketz. And here's what we read. Pharaoh has had his dream. I was reading his dream when I was reading from the Torah portion. You remember the 7 ears of corn and the 7 cows, some of them fat, some of them thin. He has no idea what they mean. He's asking, the Pharaoh is asking everybody, what's the interpretation here? And then you have this sentence. The chief cupbearer then spoke up and said to the Pharaoh, I must make mention today of my offenses. What was his offense? Well, the offense, the rabbis say, is actually explained a little bit as foreshadowing in the last sentence of the previous Torah portion, the one from last week. After Joseph was able to correctly interpret the cupbearer's dream, he says to the cupbearer, as the cupbearer is heading out of the jail on his way back to his job, and he says to him that I would like you to please remember me to Pharaoh and to let him know I don't belong in jail and get me out of here. And the last line is, yet the chief cupbearer did not think of Joseph. He forgot him. It's now 2 years later in our Torah portion. And 2 years later, we have that very same cupbearer who says, this was my offense. And he goes on to say that once when Pharaoh was angry, he had me thrown in jail, and there was a Hebrew youth there, and he was able to interpret my dreams, and I was able to be restored to my post. And thereupon, the Pharaoh called for Joseph. And of course, the rest of Joseph's life is going to change, because finally, this cupbearer remembered Joseph. But there's a very important lesson here. And that lesson is, who are we forgetting? The cupbearer forgot Joseph, and Joseph languished in jail for another 2 years. Are there people in our life that we forget? That we have forgotten what they've done for us, that we have forgotten what we owe them, that we have forgotten a favor that we owe them or they owe us? Who are the people in our lives that could be thanked, the people that could be complimented, the people that could be remembered for good? And I want to tell you a story in my life that relates to this. I was about 13 years old. Right after my bar mitzvah, I went to camp. I was a camper up at Camp Ramah. And I guess because I was a 13-year-old who just had his bar mitzvah, I was troubled. I had just spent so much time studying the Torah, and I was troubled by what I was reading. And I was troubled about God, and I was troubled about the prayers I was going to be leading. And I guess that my crisis of faith became apparent one afternoon as I stood there at camp on the front lawn. There was a counselor that walked by, not my counselor, but I knew that he was in training to become a rabbi. And he walked by and he looked at me and he said, David, you look troubled. And I said, I am troubled. I'm troubled by all sorts of things. I'm troubled about the fact that I'm a rabbi's son and I'm not so sure I believe in God. And I'm troubled about the stories I've been reading in the Torah and I don't think they happened. And I'm troubled about all those prayers that I read and I'm not sure where they're going. And yeah, I think I got a lot of problems here. I got a lot of troubles. I'm going through this crisis. And the counselor said to me, David, I'm on my way someplace. I've got to take care of something. I'm going to come back. And I think we need to have a conversation. And he left. And I waited on the front lawn. And I waited and I waited. And he never came back. I saw him the next day at the dining hall for lunch. He forgot completely the conversation. And that was probably the most important conversation I never had as a teenager. I never had it, and I wish I did. Because it took me years of struggling with all those questions and problems that I had to finally get them resolved. I wonder whether in a very short conversation I could have had when I was 13 up at Camp Ramah, that I would have heard what I needed to hear about God and about prayer and about the Torah. But I never had that conversation because he forgot me. Who are the people that we forget? Who were the people? Has this ever happened to you? You're in the middle of telling a story to somebody, and suddenly somebody comes and interrupts, and the person you're telling the story to answers him, and then he turns away. I was just telling you a story. Now's your chance to say, now go ahead, finish the story. Have you ever had the guy completely forget that you were in the middle of a story? Some of you more than others, I suspect. But when we're not listening and we're not paying attention, then we forget. And when we forget even people in the middle of their story so that we can ask them to continue, the Torah portion this Shabbat, in that very little vignette, that little sentence that says that Joseph was forgotten, reminds us that we need to remember. And we're coming to the end of a year. It was not a good year. There were a lot of people who helped us along the way. People who we may not have acknowledged. Maybe we've got to figure out some way as we come to the end of our year to begin to thank the people that need to be thanked, remember the people that need to be remembered, and however they should be remembered. And maybe then the year that was such a disaster can, for those people who we remembered and we told something to in acknowledgement, maybe brighten that end of this terrible year in some way. We're now going to do a Misha Berach for those who are not well. I'm going to ask you to raise your hand to share the names. Misha Berach Avotenu, Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Yomotenu, Sarif, Rachel, Valeah, Hu Yivarech V'Rabbeinu Cholim. May he who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal these who are sick. Let's start on this side, Bonnie. Mark Kirschbaum. Thank you. Paula. Thank you. Lou. Thank you. Ray. Phil Cooperman. Fran Kabalnik. Thank you. Bonnie? From Janet? Mark Kirschbaum, Sherry Rosenstein, Shira Farber, Ruth Cohen, Janet Kirschbaum. Thank you. Judy? Thank you. Middle section, Michael. Sam Kabalnik. Mo? Thank you. Other names? Becky? Fran Kabalnik. Thank you. Sheila? Thank you. Other names? Jordan? Paulette Pistol. Thank you. Sima? Steve Schuster. Thank you. Other names we've neglected? Lou? Thank you. Other names we've neglected? Steve? Sima Schuster. Other names we've neglected? HaKadosh Baruch Hu yishlach lehem bimheira refuat hanefesh v'refuat haguf v'toshach le'Yisrael v'nomar amen. May the All-Merciful restore these people to full health and to full vigor, along with all others who are stricken with illness, and let us say amen. We're going to make a couple of prayers, one for the United States of America. Harachaman hu yivarchet artzot habrit v'yagen aleha. May God protect the United States of America and bless us. And before we have a blessing for the state of Israel, again, thank you, Stan, for this. It comes with a picture because it's Miss Universe contest is happening, and it's happening in Israel. So this is the article. Miss Universe 2021 will be the 70th Miss Universe pageant to be held December 12th at the Universe Arena in Eilat, Israel, with 74 contestants. The first Miss Universe pageant was held in Long Beach in 1952. Miss Israel won once in 1976. The 22-year-old model from Benot Atarot, Noah Kochava, is going to be representing Israel, and she bested 11 other finalists for the title. Kochva served in the army as a medic commander and aspires to become a pediatrician. She's planning to juggle modeling and medical studies. Her father was a pilot and a squadron commander, while her mother was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. Because of this, their life at home was run in a very orderly manner. Aside from becoming a model and a beauty queen, she also, as I mentioned, wants to become a doctor. She served in the IDF as a commander in a medic course, and she kept all of the letters that she received from her fellow soldiers ever since. She studied confectionery at Estella in Tel Aviv, the only school in the country that specializes solely in pastry, bread baking, and chocolate professions. She makes lemon pie for her brothers, which they love. Okay, so good luck to Kochva, Noah Kochva. And, Right. We are going to say a blessing for the state of Israel as the Hagban Galila, please come forward. And everybody, please rise. Avi We remain standing for Musaf. Yitkadal v'yikada shmei rabba b'yamad rachirute b'michmachute b'chayechon u'b'yomechon u'v'chayedecha Beit Yisrael b'gala u'v'zman kariv v'yimeru amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevorach leolam leomei omaya Yitbarach v'ishtabach v'yipar v'truma minasei v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha v'richu le'ela mikol b'chata v'shirata tush nechata v'nechemata kamiran b'yoma v'yimeru amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu
Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarai, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot, Umevi Goel, Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo, B'yava, Melech Ozer, U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Atah Gibor Li'olam Adonai, B'chayei Metim Atah Rav L'Hoshia, Hashiva Ruach U'Morid Agashem, Mechalkel Chayim B'Chesed, Mechayei Metim B'Rachamim Rabim, Samech Noflim B'Rofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Bal Givurot, Umido Melach, Melech Memitu Mechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, B'nemanata Lachayot Meitim, Baruch Atah Adonai, B'chayei hametim, naritzcha v'nakedishcha, kisotziach sarfei kodesh, hamakedishim shimcha b'kodesh, kakatuv ayad neviacha, v'kara ze'el ze v'yamar, kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Melech Kol Haaretz Kevodo, Kevodo Malei Malei Olam, Mishartav Shoalim Shoalim Zelazeh, Aye Mikom, Mikom Kevodo, Aye Mikom, Mikom Kevodo, Liumatam Baruch Yomeru, Baruch Kevod Adonai Mimkomo. Mi mekomo, o yifen, berachamim v'yachonam, am yachadim shemo, erev avoker, b'chol yom tamid, pamayim b'yava shema omrim, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Eloheinu, Avinu, Malkeinu, Avinu, Malkeinu, Moshienu, Vehu Yashmienu Berachamav, Shenit Li'enei Kol Chai, Vehu Yashmienu Berachamav, Shenit Li'enei Kol Chai, Liot Lachem L'Elohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Uv'divrei Kodesh Katuv Le'mor, Yimloch Adonai Li'olam, Elohayich Tzion, Ledor Vador, Hallelujah. Ledor Vador Nagid Godlecha, Lenetzach Netzachim Kedushatcha Nakdish, V'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu liyamush liyalam va'ed, Yelomel Kadol v'kadosh atabaruch atadonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Please be seated. Yismecho b'malechutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat. Oneg Shabbat Yismechu b'malechutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat. V'korei Oneg Shabbat. Mekadeshei, Mekadeshei Shavi Shabbat. Kulam yisbehu v'dangu mituvecha Shabbat Yismechu B'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat, Yismechu b'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Now, before we chant our concluding prayers, Jordan Pistol will share some announcements.
Shabbat Shalom and Chanukah Sameach. On Wednesday, December 8th will be our board meeting at 7:30 p.m. via Zoom, followed by our annual members meeting and election of officers at 8 p.m. This will also be by Zoom, and the agenda for the annual meeting and the Zoom information will be sent out to all this week. On Thursday, December 9th at 7:30 p.m. will be Around the Rabbi's virtual Tish via Zoom and on your own chairs, so make sure they're clean. On Saturday, December 11th will be our Shabbat Torah study session led by our ritual Vice President Stan Schroeder at 10:30 a.m. at the home of Schroeder. On Thursday, December 16th at 7:30, again Around the Rabbi's virtual Tish via Zoom and on your own chairs, which you've already cleaned from before, so you don't need to. And by the way, if you don't put the apostrophe in rabbis, it reads rabbis. As always, we still really need the $10 Target gift cards for those in the family shelters. Please get them and send them to Fran Kabalnik quick before all them other people are crowding out the Targets. Our next Shabbat service will be on December 18th, 10:30 a.m. here in Rita's room and also available via streaming. Does anybody have anything to add? Yes. Okay, so if you brought your Target gift cards, Becky will swing for you. Anything else? Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Jordan. Let us join together in the singing of Ein Keloheinu, page 24. Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemokeinu, Ein Kemoshienu, Micheloheinu, Kadonenu, Michemokeinu, Michemoshienu, Node Leloheinu, Node Ladonenu, Node Lemokeinu, Node Lemoshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Makeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Makeinu, Atahu Moshienu. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, Lateit Gedula Leotzer Breshit, Shelo Asanu Kigoye Aratzot, Velo Samanu, Kemish Bechota Adama, Shelo Sam Chelkeinu Kahem, Vigor Aleinu, Kecho Hamona. Malchei Hamlachim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu, Shehu Noteh Shamayim ve'Yoser Haaretz, U'Moshe v'Karov Hashamayim mima'al, U'Shchinatu Zo, Megavei Meromim, U'Eloheinu Einot, Emet Malkeinu Efesulato, Kakatu v'Torato, v'yadata hayom v'ashevota, elevavecha, ki Adonai hu Elohim, b'shamayim mimal, v'al haaretz mitachat einot. V'nemar v'hayadon lemelech al kol haaretz. Bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad. Ushemo, Ushemo echad. Please be seated. However, if you are in mourning or observing yahrzeit, remain standing as we observe the following yahrzeits: Fran Friedman, Ellen Fremid, Morris Levovsky, Eli Strasner, Leah Besbeck, Beatrice Rebecca Chapman, Mary Podolsky, Rebecca Miller, Al Yablon, David Safran, Helen Limeberg, Barbara Resnick, Pearl Shalinsky, Maury Berman, Hilda Hoffman, Marvin Esco, Irvin Zelenitz, Ravella Katz, Stanley Miller, Label Sal, Audrey Markinson, Rebecca Nimovitz, Charles Schneer, Sarah Weiscott, Irving Klinetsky, and Harry Sklar. Are there any yahrzeits we've left out? Harry Lipman. Other names? The Mourner's Kaddish is on page 25. Yit Gadal v'Yit Shemei Rabbah. V'Alma Divrachi Rute v'Yamlich Malchute v'Chayechon u'V'Yomechon u'V'Chayedecho Beit Yisrael ba'Agala u'Vizman Kari v'Yemeru. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevorach li'olam u'Omei Omaya. Yitbarach v'Yishtabach v'Yitpoar v'Yitromam v'Yitnaseh v'Yithadar v'Yitaleh v'Yitalal Shemei Dekudasha B'richu Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran bi'alma v'imeru. Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba min Shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen. Please be seated. Wish all of you a happy Hanukkah and a Shabbat Shalom. We're going to conclude with Adon Olam, but I wanted to thank all of you far and wide who have joined us for services this Shabbat. We are going to conclude with Adon Olam, page 26, to a familiar Hanukkah melody. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra li'et nasa b'chefzo kol azai melech shemo nikra v'acharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora v'hu haya v'hu hoveh V'hu yeh b'tifara, v'hu echad v'yein sheni, l'hamshil lo bira, v'li reshit, v'li tachlit, v'lo ha'oz v'hamisra, v'hu eli v'chai goali, v'tzorchev li b'yetzara, v'hu nisi umanos li, v'nat kosi b'yom ekra, b'yado afkid ruchi, v'yeti shan v'ya'ira, v'im ruchi geviyati, Adonai li v'lo ira. Shabbat Shalom. Happy Hanukkah. You're welcome. You're welcome anytime.